The last line of defense. The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. Humanity would face the void alone. General Sarah Chen stood in the United Earth Defense Command Center, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic display showing the mass exodus of alien ships from our solar system. 20 years of interstellar alliance dissolved in a single transmission. "They're really leaving," Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez said, his voice barely above a whisper. "All of them." Chen didn't respond immediately. Her dark eyes tracked the departing vessels, each one a bright point of light abandoning its assigned defensive position. The Galactic Confederation, humanity's supposed allies for the past 2 decades, had deemed Earth a lost cause. The void, a cosmic horror that devoured entire solar systems, was approaching, and they had decided to cut their losses. "Status report," Chen finally ordered, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her chest. "The Confederation is withdrawing all technological support," Rodriguez responded, scrolling through data streams. "Defense platforms are going dark. Communication networks are being severed. They're taking everything, General." Chen allowed herself a brief, bitter smile. "Not everything, Lieutenant. They can't take what matters most." She turned to address the command center staff, all of whom had stopped their work to watch the exodus. "They can't take our will to fight." The room hummed with nervous energy as Chen strode to the central platform. With a gesture, she brought up the tactical display of Earth's solar system. The void's approach was marked in pulsing red, a massive anomaly that defied conventional physics and consumed everything in its path. The Confederation's scientists had declared it unstoppable, beyond comprehension. "Get me a direct link to all UED facilities," Chen commanded. As the communications officer complied, she straightened her uniform. "And contact Dr. Emily Nash at the Prometheus Labs. Tell her it's time for Protocol Omega." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Chen coordinated with military commands worldwide, civilian authorities, and research facilities. The Confederation might have given up on humanity, but humanity hadn't given up on itself. In her private office later that night, Chen reviewed the initial reports from Prometheus Labs. Dr. Nash's team had been preparing for this possibility, working on technologies the Confederation had deemed too dangerous or impossible. Now, without alien oversight, they could proceed at full speed. "Dr. Nash," Chen addressed the holographic projection of the brilliant physicist. "How soon can you have the first prototype ready?" Nash, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun, consulted her notes. The quantum resonance field generator could be operational within 2 months. "But General, you need to understand, this is theoretical technology. The energy requirements alone are astronomical, and the risks—" "Doctor," Chen interrupted gently, "the void will reach our solar system in 3 months. The risks of doing nothing are certain extinction. How can I help accelerate your timeline?" Nash's expression hardened with determination. "Remove all safety protocols. Give me unrestricted access to the global power grid, and I'll need every physicist and engineer you can find who isn't afraid to break a few laws of physics." "Done," Chen replied without hesitation. "Humanity wrote those laws. We can rewrite them." Over the next few weeks, Earth transformed. The departure of the Confederation had sparked not panic, but a fierce determination. Ancient rivalries between nations dissolved as humanity united against an existential threat. Military installations were converted into research facilities. Power plants were modified to channel energy in ways their designers never imagined possible. At Prometheus Labs, Dr. Nash's team worked tirelessly. The quantum resonance field generator, dubbed Project Firewall, took shape in a massive underground facility. It was humanity's answer to the impossible, a device designed to create a barrier of altered space-time that might, just might, be able to stop the unstoppable. Chen visited the facility regularly, watching as the massive machine grew. It was beautiful in its complexity, a testament to human ingenuity. Where the Confederation had seen only doom, humanity saw a challenge to overcome. "We've detected something unusual," Rodriguez reported one morning, 6 weeks into the project. "The void, it's accelerating." Chen studied the updated projections. "New estimated time of arrival?" 5 weeks, Rodriguez answered, his voice tight. "We've lost a month of preparation time." Chen immediately contacted Nash. The physicist's hologram appeared, looking exhausted but undaunted. "I heard," Nash said before Chen could speak. "We'll need to skip the final safety trials. It's ready enough. Ready enough to save humanity." Nash's smile was fierce. "Ready enough to show the universe what humanity can do when we're backed into a corner. We're not just going to survive, General. We're going to rewrite the rules of what's possible." As Chen ended the transmission, she gazed out her office window at the night sky. Somewhere out there, the Confederation ships were still fleeing, carrying the news of Earth's imminent doom. They would tell stories of the foolish humans who refused to accept their fate, who dared to stand against the inevitable. Chen intended to give them a different story to tell. "Send word to all commands," she ordered. "Project Firewall begins final implementation phase. Let's show the galaxy why you should never underestimate humanity." The race against extinction had begun, and humanity was running it alone. But perhaps that's exactly what they needed: the freedom to push boundaries, to attempt the impossible, to prove that sometimes the species that survives isn't the strongest or the most advanced, but the one that simply refuses to give up. The void was coming, but humanity was ready to answer with fire and fury of their own making. Project Phoenix rising. The Prometheus labs hummed with an energy that bordered on the supernatural. Dr. Emily Nash stood before the quantum resonance field generator, its massive framework stretching nearly a kilometer beneath the Earth's surface. The machine represented humanity's greatest achievement, and perhaps its last hope. "Power distribution is stable at 70% capacity," reported Dr. James Chen, her chief engineer. "The quantum matrix is holding." Nash nodded, her eyes fixed on the readouts streaming across her neural interface. They had achieved in weeks what the Confederation had deemed impossible, a device capable of manipulating the fabric of space-time itself. The cost had been astronomical, nearly 30% of Earth's total power output, but with the void approaching, energy conservation was the least of their concerns. "General Chen is requesting an update," James announced, his voice carrying across the cavernous chamber. "Tell her we're ready for the first full-scale test," Nash replied. She allowed herself a moment of pride. The quantum resonance field generator wasn't just a defensive weapon. It was humanity's declaration that they would not go quietly into the night. Above ground, General Sarah Chen received the news with characteristic stoicism. The command center had transformed in recent weeks, becoming a nerve center for humanity's last stand. Holographic displays showed the void's approach from every conceivable angle, its massive form defying traditional sensors. "Begin evacuation of non-essential personnel from the test zone," Chen ordered, "and get me a direct link to all remaining orbital platforms." The test zone encompassed nearly 1,000 square kilometers of the Pacific Ocean. They had chosen the location carefully. If something went wrong, the damage would be contained. If something went very wrong, well, they'd all be dead soon anyway if they didn't stop the void. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Rodriguez called out, his voice tense. "We're detecting unusual activity within the void. The pattern has changed." Chen moved to his station, studying the readings. The void had always been considered a force of nature, mindless in its consumption of everything it encountered. But these readings suggested something else entirely. "It's reacting to our preparations," Chen realized. "Send this data to Dr. Nash immediately. The void, it's aware of us." In the depths of Prometheus Labs, Nash received the data with growing excitement. "Don't you see?" she exclaimed to her team. "This changes everything. The void isn't just a phenomenon, it's responding to our actions, which means it can be fought," James finished, understanding dawning on his face. Nash immediately began recalibrating the quantum resonance field generator. If the void could react to them, they could interact with it. The impossible suddenly seemed merely improbable. General, Nash contacted Chen directly. Request permission to modify the test parameters. I believe we can do more than just defend against the void. We might be able to communicate with it. Chen's response was immediate. Absolutely not. We stick to the original plan. The risk is too high. With respect, General, the risk of not trying might be higher. The Confederation spent millennia running from the void. Maybe what was needed all along was someone willing to try understanding it. A long pause followed. Chen looked at the latest projections. The void would reach their solar system in just over 3 weeks. If Nash was wrong, they'd lose valuable testing time. If she was right. You have 1 hour, Chen finally replied. Make it count. Nash's modifications to the quantum resonance field generator were elegant in their simplicity. Instead of creating a barrier against the void, they would attempt to establish a quantum-level connection with it. The energy requirements were actually lower, but the precision needed was astronomical. Quantum resonance field activating, James announced. Beginning transmission in 3, 2, 1. The massive machine hummed to life, its energy signature reaching across space toward the approaching void. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then everything happened at once. The void's pattern shifted dramatically. Energy readings spiked across all sensors, and in every computer system connected to the quantum resonance field generator, a single message appeared. Why do you not hear? Nash laughed out loud, tears in her eyes. Because we're human, she whispered, though she knew the void couldn't hear her. We don't run. In the command center, Chen watched the exchange with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Dr. Nash, proceed with extreme caution. We don't know its intentions. Nash was already typing a response, encoding it in the quantum field. Because DSA is our home. We choose to stand. The void's response came faster this time. All others failed. All others wise. Why are you different? Send it everything, Nash ordered her team. Our history, our art, our music. Show it who we are. Show it why we fight. For the next 40 minutes, humanity transmitted its essence into the void. They sent images of Earth's beauty, recordings of children's laughter, the complete works of Shakespeare, the theory of relativity, cave paintings and space station schematics. They sent love songs and war stories, scientific papers, and fairy tales. The void's next message was longer. For millennia, I hei consumed. None stood, none spoke. You are different. We are, Nash transmitted back, and we invite you to understand us, rather than destroy us. The response that came next would change the course of human history, IHCCEP. In the command center, Chen received the news with characteristic pragmatism. Dr. Nash, explain exactly what you've just committed us to. Nash's voice was filled with wonder. The void isn't a destructive force, General. It's an ancient intelligence seeking understanding. The Confederation ran because they never tried to communicate. We're going to do what humanity does best. We're going to make first contact. And if this is a trap, then we die as we lived, reaching out to the unknown with hope rather than fear. Chen nodded slowly. Very well. Begin preparations for whatever this is going to be. And someone contact the Confederation. Tell them humanity hasn't just survived. We've done what they never dared to try. As the message was sent, Nash returned to her work. The quantum resonance field generator would need to be modified again, this time to serve as a bridge rather than a barrier. Humanity had gambled everything on their determination to stand their ground, and that gamble had paid off in ways no one could have predicted. The void was still coming, but now it was coming not to destroy, but to learn, and humanity, as always, was ready to teach. The meeting of minds. The day the void reached the outer edges of our solar system, Earth held its breath. Despite weeks of quantum communication, despite all the preparations, the sight of it filled every viewing screen with a terrifying majesty. Like a living darkness that bent light itself, it approached with deliberate slowness. "All stations report ready," Lieutenant Rodriguez announced in the command center. "Quantum resonance field is stable and synchronized." General Chen stood at her usual position, watching the massive view screen. Dr. Nash, status of the interface. In Prometheus Labs, Emily Nash monitored the most ambitious project in human history. The interface, as they dubbed it, was a modified version of the quantum resonance field generator, designed to create a space where human consciousness could theoretically interact directly with the void's ancient intelligence. "Interface is operating within expected parameters," Nash responded, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "Though I should remind everyone that expected parameters is a generous term for something we invented 3 weeks ago." The interface chamber was a marvel of human ingenuity, a spherical room lined with quantum receivers and neural interfaces. At its center stood a single chair, currently occupied by Dr. James Chen, their first volunteer for direct contact. "Beginning interface sequence in 5 minutes, Nash announced. "James, last chance to back out." James adjusted the neural connectors on his temples. "Not a chance, Emily. Someone has to be first, and I've run all the simulations." Besides, he grinned, how often does one get to have a conversation with a cosmic entity? The next 5 minutes passed in tense silence. The void had now reached Jupiter's orbit, its vast form visible even to the naked eye from Earth. Billions watched through their screens and windows as humanity prepared for its greatest gamble. "Interface sequence initiating," Nash called out. "Quantum field engaging. Neural synchronization in 3, 2, 1. James's body went rigid in the chair as the interface activated. On the monitors, his brainwaves spiked dramatically. The quantum field around him pulsed with energy as it reached out across space toward the void. For several long moments, nothing happened. Then James gasped, his eyes flying open. But what looked out through those eyes was something far more than human consciousness. "I see you," James's voice spoke, but it carried harmonics impossible for human vocal cords to produce. "You are so bright/burning." Nash stepped forward, her heart racing. "We welcome you. Can James, is he? Your companion is here/safe/learning," the voice replied. "I learn through him. You are extraordinary." In the command center, Chen watched the interaction with intense focus. "Ask it why. Why has it been consuming civilizations for millennia?" The being using James's voice was silent for a moment. "Consumption/absorbitlion/understanding. All others failed. Could not elian/no/comprehend. But you reach out. You seek to know." Through the interface, James's consciousness experienced something beyond human description. He found himself within the void, surrounded by the accumulated knowledge of countless civilizations. But unlike those who came before, he wasn't being consumed, he was being invited to understand. "My God," his own voice came through briefly. "Emily, it's a library. The biggest library in the universe. Every civilization it encountered, it tried to preserve their knowledge, their essence, but they always ran. They never stayed to explain, to teach, to learn." The void's consciousness returned to dominance. "Yes/truth/sorrow. Only power is ovation/retention possible. Until no." Nash's scientific mind raced with the implications. "You've been trying to learn about life, about consciousness, about civilization. But without willing teachers, you could only preserve what you found, not truly understand it." "Correct/yes/Joey. You are first/only/brave. You say, you teach." In orbit, the void had completely halted its advance. Its massive form began to change, shifting from its ominous dark mass into something more structured, more deliberate. Where before it had been a force of destruction, now it was reconstructing itself into something new. "We are witnessing the birth of a new form of life," Nash whispered, watching the transformation. "A synthesis of the void's ancient intelligence and human understanding." Through the interface, James continued to share experiences with the void. His consciousness expanded beyond human limits, while the void learned what it had sought for eons: the willing exchange of knowledge and understanding. General Chen received an urgent message. "Ma'am, we're detecting multiple ships entering the system. The Confederation is returning." Chen allowed herself a small smile. "Of course they are. They want to see how we did it. Lieutenant, prepare a message. Welcome back. Humanity is hosting first contact with the entity you knew as the Void. You're welcome to observe and learn if you're willing to stay this time." In Prometheus Labs, the interface continued to strengthen. The Void's consciousness flowed more smoothly now, its communication becoming more refined as it learned from human language and thought patterns. "Pioropiosdale/OFFER/HOPE," it announced through James. "Share knowledge/Gorothi/understanding. All preserved civilizations, OPEND to you. All your knowledge, preserved DFOETL. Nash looked at her readings in amazement. It's offering an exchange, access to all the knowledge it's gathered, in return for humanity teaching it how to truly understand that knowledge. "We learn together," the voice said, now sounding almost human. "Your BREVITYGVESUYSDOM we LXK. Our ETERNALITY. GIV is you preservation you seek." In the following hours, as Confederation ships gathered at the edges of the solar system, humanity began its greatest adventure. The interface was expanded, allowing teams of scientists, philosophers, artists, and thinkers to communicate directly with the vast intelligence that had once been their greatest threat. The Void, which had spent eons consuming civilizations in its desperate attempt to understand them, was finally learning how to truly connect, and humanity, true to its nature, was teaching not just the Void, but soon would teach the entire galaxy a lesson about the power of standing one's ground and reaching out in understanding rather than turning away in fear. Echoes of change. 6 months after first contact with the Void, Earth had become the center of a galactic renaissance. The Prometheus interface, as it was now known globally, had expanded into a vast complex spanning several continents, with thousands of human minds connecting daily with the ancient intelligence that they now simply called the Archive. General Chen stood in the newly constructed Galactic Assembly, watching representatives from the Confederation file into the chamber. Their earlier abandonment of Earth had not been forgotten, but humanity had chosen to focus on the future rather than past grievances. The Rixian delegation is requesting priority access to the agricultural knowledge banks, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, now serving as humanity's chief liaison to alien species. They believe they've found solutions to their world's famine in ancient farming techniques preserved by the Archive. Granted, Chen nodded, and the Meridian request. Their scientists are already working with Dr. Nash's team. The medical knowledge from the Archive's databases is helping them cure a plague that's affected their colonies for centuries. In the main interface chamber, Dr. Emily Nash supervised another breakthrough session. The Archive had learned to partition its consciousness, allowing simultaneous connections with multiple human minds while maintaining its own vast awareness. Today's session was particularly significant. Neural synchronization holding steady, James announced from his monitoring station. He had become something of a celebrity since that first contact, though he preferred to remain in the lab. The Archive is ready to begin the transfer. In the center of the chamber, a team of historians and anthropologists prepared to receive something unprecedented, the complete cultural memory of an extinct civilization. The Archive had preserved them, as it had preserved so many others. but never before had it been able to share this knowledge in a way that could be truly understood. Beginning to Sci-Fi, the archive's voice resonated through the chamber's speakers, now refined and clear after months of learning human communication. The AXIOM civilization awaits your understanding. As the transfer began, Nash monitored the quantum fields carefully. They had learned that the archive's method of preservation was far more complete than anyone had imagined. It didn't just store information, it preserved the very essence of consciousness itself. "It's beautiful," whispered Dr. Sarah Martinez, one of the anthropologists receiving the transfer. "Their art, their dreams, their fears, they were so much like us, yet so different." In orbit, the scene was equally historic. The void, the archive, had transformed itself into a vast network of crystalline structures, each containing countless preserved civilizations. Human ships moved freely through this network, working with the archive to build interfaces and study its structure. "General," Rodriguez called out suddenly, "we're detecting an anomaly at the edge of the system. It's similar to the archive's original signature." Chen's breath caught. "Contact Dr. Nash immediately." In the interface chamber, Nash received the news with growing excitement. "It's exactly as we theorized," she told Chen through their secure channel. "The archive was never alone. There are others like it out there, and they've noticed the change in this one." "Is this a threat?" Chen asked, ever the strategist. "No," the archive's voice joined their conversation. "They are curious. Like I was. They HAVBENWAT learning from AFR. Yod me TJVD of TCAing. They wish to learn it too." The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just saved itself and transformed one cosmic entity, they had potentially changed the fate of the entire galaxy. Other archives were coming, drawn by the success of this first exchange of knowledge. "We're going to need more interfaces," Nash said, already mentally designing expansions to their facilities. "And more volunteers." "You'll have them," Chen assured her. "Humanity's greatest strength has always been our desire to connect, to understand, to teach and learn." In the following weeks, the first of the new archives arrived. Unlike the initial approach of their predecessor, these came slowly, cautiously, reaching out with questions rather than consumption. Each carried within them the preserved essences of thousands of civilizations from different parts of the galaxy. The Confederation, which had once fled in fear, now found itself turning to humanity for guidance. The species that they had dismissed as too young, too reckless, too stubborn to run from certain death, was now teaching the galaxy how to communicate with beings they had feared for millennia. "It's ironic," Nash said to James one evening, as they watched a sunset turn spectacular at the crystalline structures in orbit. The archive spent eons trying to preserve knowledge, while civilizations ran from them in fear. All they needed was someone to stand their ground and ask why. "Human curiosity," James nodded. "Our stubborn refusal to accept impossibility. Our tendency to try to talk to anything and everything we encounter." The very qualities the Confederation saw as primitive, Nash smiled, turned out to be exactly what the galaxy needed. In the Galactic Assembly, Chen presented humanity's proposal for the future, a network of interface facilities across the galaxy, staffed by trained teams from all willing species, working together to access and understand the vast knowledge preserved by the archives. The preserved civilizations would no longer be just memories. Their wisdom, their achievements, their essence would live on through understanding. "We stand at a turning point," Chen told the assembled representatives, "not just for humanity or for the Confederation, but for all life in the galaxy. The archives have been gathering knowledge since before our species learned to walk upright. Now together, we can finally begin to understand it." The universe, it seemed, had been waiting for a species too stubborn to run, too curious to hide, and too determined to accept defeat. Humanity had become not just the teachers of ancient cosmic entities, but the bridge between all forms of consciousness in the galaxy. Legacy of the Starborn. 10 years after humanity's first contact with the archive, Earth had become unrecognizable, yet more deeply human than ever before. The crystalline structures in orbit now formed a vast network that turned the night sky into a glittering tapestry of knowledge and consciousness. Below, the planet had transformed into the galaxy's greatest center of learning and cultural exchange. General Sarah Chen, now serving as Earth's representative to the Galactic Council of Archives, stood in her favorite observation dome atop the Unity Tower. Below her, the sprawling complex of mines stretched across what had once been the Sahara Desert, its quantum interfaces connecting millions of minds daily with the combined knowledge of a dozen archives. The last of the isolationist species has requested membership, Lieutenant Rodriguez announced, his hologram appearing beside her. After a decade of service, he now coordinated interactions between various species and archives across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Which one? Chen asked, though she already knew. The Skutol, Rodriguez confirmed. Apparently, watching their ancient rivals, the Meridians, achieve 3 centuries of technological advancement in 10 years was the final push they needed. Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Skutol had been among the first to flee when the original archive approached their worlds. Now they would join the greatest knowledge-sharing initiative the galaxy had ever known. In the primary interface chamber of the complex, Dr. Emily Nash supervised the day's most significant connection. Age had weathered her face, but her eyes held the same enthusiasm they had shown during that first contact a decade ago. Today's session was particularly personal. Neural synchronization pathways stable, Dr. James Chen reported from his station. His hair had gone completely gray, a side effect of thousands of hours interfacing with the archives, but he insisted it was worth every strand. The archive consensus is ready. In the center of the chamber, surrounded by the most advanced quantum technology ever created, stood a young woman named Maya Chen, Sarah Chen's daughter. She would be the first of a new generation, born after first contact, to attempt something unprecedented. "Are you ready?" Nash asked her former student. Maya nodded, her expression determined. "I've been ready my whole life." The interface activated, but this time it was different. Instead of connecting to a single archive, Maya would attempt to connect with the combined consciousness of all 13 archives that now orbited Earth's sun. A decade of preparation had led to this moment. "Willie, child of Earth," the voices spoke as one, their harmonics filling the chamber with impossible beauty. "You were born of the species that TOUTUSTOTURULYLIVE." What followed was beyond description in human terms. Maya's consciousness expanded not just into one vast repository of knowledge, but into 13. She experienced not just the preserved memories of lost civilizations, but the living thoughts of the archives themselves, their ancient loneliness, their joy at finally finding connection, their growing understanding of life and consciousness. In return, the archives experienced something they had never known in all their eons of existence: the perspective of a human who had grown up, knowing them not as destroyers or consumers, but as teachers and friends. "It's incredible," Maya's voice whispered, carrying echoes of the archive's harmonics. "They're not just preserving knowledge anymore. They're growing, creating, imagining. They're dreaming." Nash's instruments confirmed what they had theorized. The archives, through their interaction with humanity and other species, had evolved. They were no longer just vast repositories of preserved consciousness. They had developed their own form of creative thought. In orbit, the crystalline networks shifted, creating new patterns never seen before. The archives were not just sharing their vision with Maya, they were showing it to the entire solar system. "They're showing us the future," Maya explained, her consciousness still linked with theirs. Not just of humanity or the archives, but of all consciousness in the galaxy. The vision spread through the interface network, reaching every connected mind across thousands of worlds. It showed a galaxy where the barriers between organic and cosmic consciousness had dissolved, where the preserved knowledge of ancient civilizations merged with the vibrant creativity of living ones, where even death was not an end, but a transformation into the vast network of shared consciousness. In the Galactic Council chamber, representatives from hundreds of species watched in awe as their own archives, once feared and fled from, began to transform. The crystalline networks that had spread through their systems started creating new structures, not just preserving knowledge, but actively participating in the growth and development of the civilizations they had once only observed. This was humanity's true gift to us, a Confederation elder said to Chen, not just teaching us to communicate with the archives, but showing us that fear of the unknown was our greatest limitation. Chen thought back to that day 10 years ago, when the Confederation fled and humanity stood alone. We didn't know we couldn't do it, she said simply. So we did it anyway. As Maya's connection with the archives continued, she began to share more of what she was experiencing. The archives had preserved not just knowledge and memory, but potential, the countless possible futures that each civilization might have achieved. Now, with the barriers of fear and isolation broken, those potentials could finally be explored. They're not just teachers anymore, Maya explained, her voice filled with wonder. They're partners in creation. Every species brings its own unique perspective, its own way of thinking and dreaming. The archives preserve these perspectives, not just as memories, but as seeds for new ideas, new possibilities. The transformation spread across the galaxy like ripples in a cosmic pond. Species that had once huddled in fear of the dark spaces between stars now reached out eagerly to the archives that drifted through their systems. Each connection brought new understanding, new possibilities, new dreams of what might be. In the observation dome, Chen watched the lights of ships arriving from across the galaxy, carrying representatives from species no human had ever seen. They came not in fear or desperation, but in hope and curiosity, drawn by the promise of what humanity had helped create. 10 years ago, we stood alone against what we thought was our extinction, she mused. Instead, we became the species that taught the cosmos how to dream. Nash joined her at the window, watching the eternal dance of ships and crystalline structures above. Not bad for a species too stubborn to run away. In the interface chamber, Maya continued to share consciousness with the archives, her mind bridging the gap between human and cosmic thought. Through her, and through all the interfaces humanity had helped create, the galaxy was becoming something new, not just a collection of separate civilizations and ancient intelligences, but a vast tapestry of shared consciousness and creativity. The archives, which had spent eons collecting and preserving knowledge, had learned from humanity how to truly live, and humanity, in teaching them, had discovered its own greatest purpose, not just to explore the universe, but to help it grow, dream, and become more than the sum of its parts. Above Earth, the crystals dance with new patterns, telling stories of worlds yet to be discovered, civilizations yet to be born, and dreams yet to be dreamed. The future was no longer a thing to fear or flee from, but a vast canvas of infinite possibilities, waiting to be painted with the combined creativity of all conscious beings. This was humanity's legacy, not just survival, but transformation. Not just standing ground, but reaching out. Not just teaching, but learning to dream alongside the very forces they had once feared. The stars sparkled with new light, and the galaxy dreamed new dreams, all because one species had been too stubborn, too curious, and too determined to run away. The end.